Hello, 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 hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Radio Free Wall Street. How are you doing? You are here. And this is a very important broadcast, and I'll tell you, it took me 2 days to put together. And what I wanted to do is look at, in some detail, the Donald Trump trade war. You know, he started this trade shit with the Chinese, and the markets have poo-pooed it. It's a nothing burger. It's not going to happen. And to my shock, as we looked at the thing, we understood that Donald Trump said that this is just the start. And 10% duties across the board on $150 billion worth of imports from China are going to be put on by the United States of America. This will be the largest trade sanctions in a block form ever occurring in the history of mankind. And this will be the two greatest trading nations on the planet Earth literally going to war with each other. And the question is, what in the hell's going on? Well, it's Donald Trump.
Components of the Chinese.
He wants to show that he's the guy. He's facing a really tough elections. And then after the elections, Donald Trump really knows how to look ahead to protect his own interests. Let me tell you the deal. After the elections, Sessions will be fired. The Mueller probe will, to the outrage of many people, will be stopped. And there will be a constitutional crisis. Now, Donald Trump knows that the art of the deal, or the bullshit deal, needs to create smoke. And the smoke is a ongoing, increasing trade war with the Chinese. And all of a sudden, this all makes sense. Now, you might notice that he talked about the first group of sanctions before the election. The second group of sanctions occurs after Christmas in January. Now, a note of January is the new Congress and new Senate are sworn in, and Donald Trump already knows that there'll be a majority in the House that will start a witch hunt. It might be a deep state conspiracy, it might be Hillary Dillary Doc, whatever, but he knows shit's coming. So what's happening? He's now going to put 25% duty against Chinese goods. Now, what you need to understand is the Chinese have already responded, okay? And they've said that they are now going to put duties against $50 billion of U.S. imports. And so the trade war is on, tit for tat, and it's increasing. And Donald Trump is not playing here. Not playing at all. And the markets do not understand that. And I want to be the first to tell you that this trade war that is going to collapse the stock market, and it is going to guys, I'm just telling you, it's going to create the Trump depression. And are you ready for that? You know, there's a lot of things that people don't understand. For example, of all the Chinese exports, they are the powerhouse. And I don't think that people understand how big China is or how many markets they're in. Donald Trump's basically trying to bully them, okay? And the answer is people don't like it. And what's going on here is all of a sudden we have got a situation where, China doesn't need us. Now, depending upon how you calculate it, a fair number of exports by China to the United States is about 10%. Okay, now that number can vary, but that's a pretty good rule of thumb. So we represent only 10% of China's export market. And all of a sudden, China is not that dependent on America for its future. And it gets even uglier. The other situation you've got to understand is that China has decided that it can stand a trade war and that it's not going to back down. China is ready to establish itself as a world leader. And, let's face it, under Trump, a lot of people are pissed off at the United States, and a lot of people are cheering for China. Are you hearing me? The Chinese are not in a weak position, contrary to myth. And contrary to myth, they can stand the trade war. Now it gets even uglier. China can retaliate in many ways. For example, rare earth minerals. There are a lot of them that only China provides. Ingredients that go into lithium batteries. The F-35 fighter has over 150 items, including semiconductor chips, that are only sourced from the Chinese. So now, all of a sudden, we're looking at this trade war, and it doesn't look so good for the United States. Can America spend 25% increase in the crap we buy from Walmart? Well, years ago, the campaign was to do Made in America. It was a dismal failure. People want the cheapest price goods, and they don't care where it's made, and they don't care about the balance of trade deficit. They don't care about trade wars. And the situation is that China all of a sudden is in a very strong situation. So, what is the outcome? The stock market is not pricing in the Chinese wipeout. They are not pricing in the growing Chinese crisis. They are not pricing in what is going to be an ugly trade war that America will potentially lose. Yes, I said lose. Now, Donald Trump is a big showman. You might remember when Jack May, that's Alabama's founder, and he was in the White House, and they did a big press thing, and he announced how he was going to bring 1 million jobs into America. Yay, 1 million jobs. Of course, I don't understand exactly what the jobs were going to be or how much they were going to pay, but that's what May pledged. And that was during a January meeting. Now, May said that the promise was made on the premise of friendly U.S.-China partnership and rational trade relationship. That premise no longer exists today, so our promise cannot be fulfilled. And now you might notice that they were going to have the business roundtable, and that's where all the business guys are going to get together and work with Donald Trump. You might remember the $1 trillion pothole program. You remember all that? Well, what happened to it? Well, reality is, it ain't no more. Reality is that these vast agreements are no longer possible with Donald Trump. And that means that trade wars are starting. That means that the antagonism is growing. And that means the world is being fractured on a Donald Trump. And that fracture of the world is going to end up with a major disaster for America. So I want to be very clear here. The stock market is not crashing on the news of the trade war. It's not even crashing or going down on the threat of no new jobs from May. It's not even reacting to the price increases Americans are going to experience. Why? Well, the market's saying, hey, how great is this? This is just an election year ploy. Trump is not going to go through with it. And 10% duty is not that much anyway. What the market forgets is that Donald Trump has now committed, as a result of China calling his bluff, to increase sanctions to $500 billion worth of goods, and come January 1st, escalate the tariffs to 25%. Now, our analysis is that it is wrong to assume that Donald Trump is bluffing. He needs this headline politically. He needs the narrative. He needs the noise to drown out some skullduggery. Donald Trump has now been informed that Mueller cannot be bought off by Donald Trump promising him a pardon, because the way the agreement was written for testimony, he has pled guilty to state charges, which means that if he reneges on testifying, he now will go to jail for a very long time in the state of New York beyond the reach of Donald Trump. Uh-oh. So this is pretty damn ugly. Now, there's more. Donald Trump also realizes that the Mueller investigation is getting very close to Bayturth. And today he announced in a widely taken interview on the Hill that said, oh, I have no attorney general. And I'm not just mad about the Mueller Russian investigation, but he did very poorly in his hearings. And you go, what? Donald Trump is setting the stage to fire the attorney general. He's going to stop the investigation to him and his family and the Russian probe, as it's well known. And he is going to hide behind executive privilege, which means that he's about to throw us into a constitutional crisis. So what's his game plan? Well, polling now exists that proves that Trump's in big trouble. Now listen to me. This is not the joke polling from Fox News or CNN. This is the finest pollers in the world. They had a huddle in the White House this weekend, and they broke the news to Donald Trump that, hey, Donald, you lost the House, and as your popularity keeps plunging, you will lose the Congress. Donald Trump's saying, no, I'm not going to lose the Senate. I'm fine because it's the economy. And they said, no. The public is not biting that economy. It's not driving the market. And Trump realized that and quickly responded with more trade sanctions against the Chinese. He responded quickly with sessions to set up the stopping of the special prosecution investigator. So what you are seeing as a president of the United States who is under siege is in deep trouble, and his solution is a trade war. Now listen to me. Donald Trump doesn't give a shit about the economy. Donald Trump doesn't give a shit about trade. Donald Trump gives a shit about Donald Trump and nothing else, and he sees he's going down. His solution is, and we've been predicting this for quite a while, is an all-out trade war with the Chinese to get the people's eyes off the prosecution and to allow for him to say, look, I'm fighting the Chinese who are taking our jobs, collapsing our economy. This is important business, and the deep state conspiracy is trying to stop us. So what's the outcome? Our opinion is that with the Fed raising rates, the U.S. economy will slow down with massive debts that are plaguing the U.S. economy, that we're about to have a nice little wipeout. I also predict that Donald Trump will end up being impeached, and before he is thrown out of office, he will give us hell. We're talking about constitutional challenges. We're talking about crises like never seen before. So I urge you to prepare yourself for the Donald Trump Great Depression. I urge you to understand that Donald is out for Donald. And Donald Trump will throw us into a depression, will throw us into a trade war, will throw us into military conflict, anything to get the headline and anything to keep the heat off of him. Now, you might notice that Donald Trump came with a lot of support of the business community. Notice how quiet they are. Donald Trump came into power with the idea that he was going to be the business president. He was going to build infrastructure. He was going to use the art of the deal and his mind-melding abilities to get drug companies to lower the prices, bring down Medicare costs. We're still in Obamacare. Remember the Great Wall of Mexico? That's not being built. So these trade negotiations, he has not finished one negotiation yet. Now, we feel like he will do a negotiation with Mexico and China because they can be bullied. But he is now up against the juggernaut. He's now up against the Chinese, and they have let it be known they're not going to be bullied. They are going to fight back, and they can lose 10% of their global export market in the United States if need be. Very clever move on their part. They can really survive it. They can really make it work. And all of a sudden, in a Trump world, they can see themselves clear to lose U.S. market share. Now, remember, they're approximately 10% of all their exports go to the United States. In a trade war, they're not going to lose 10%. They might lose 5%. So the losses of business that they can undertake here is well in the realm of what they can afford. And well within the realm that everyone else is watching. Remember, we have two trade wars going on at the same time. And the two trade wars are the China exit and the British exit. So the trade platforms, the trading situations, trading relationships that have existed a long time are being undone. So we have Europe in turmoil with the Brits leaving, and we have China in turmoil with the United States. So this is a trade war. This doesn't end in anything good. These trade wars oftentimes end up in real wars. And I caution you that China can afford to lose the United States as a customer. The United States can afford to lose China as a supplier. But the stock market can't afford any of those things. You've got a stock market that is priced for perfection. And the reality is that China is going to change the profitability of many businesses. If you take the S&P 500, 40% of the profits of the S&P 500 are on U.S. exports. Now, as the United States enters a trade war, another thing's happening. The dollar's becoming stronger and stronger, as you're seeing, on balance. That makes U.S. goods less competitive, more expensive. And the reality here is that China knows how to exploit that. China announced that it would not use the ringgit, the Chinese yuan, as a weapon in the war. I laughed and said, you bet their ass they will. And China says it doesn't want to lose America as a customer, but they realize that at the most they're going to suffer is a loss of about 5% of their gross sales. When you calculate the trade import duties, when you calculate the mitigation effort by the Chinese government to subsidize their businesses, when you calculate their falling currency, it's lost almost 10% in the past year, and the fact that the Chinese realize, wait a minute, we're better off having a trade war coming out of the elections because guess what? Donald Trump's going to have no support. Donald Trump's going to be in big trouble. Donald Trump's going to be fighting for his survival, and we're sure we can get a better deal with Pence. Hang on, tea time. I love this stuff. So, sit with me here. Let's chat about this. What you have going on here is a trade war that's not about trade. It's about politics. It's about Trump's attempt to stay in power. It's about a besieged president that is now fighting for survival. I don't know if people understand how close Donald Trump is to impeachment, how close his family is to prosecution, or how close this probe is getting played dirt. Do not underestimate Donald Trump's crisis. Do not underestimate his problems. Do not underestimate his desperation or his willingness to throw the world into a depression to survive. So you've got a situation where 10% of China's exports go to America. They'll lose maybe half, 5%. As China looks at the losses, it becomes very acceptable for them. In other words, yeah, we can survive this. And once they realize that, China becomes invincible. Because let me tell you another side of this. Donald Trump's put sanctions against Russia. It's putting draconian sanctions against Iran, which most people feel is unfair because there was an agreement. Whether you like the agreement or not, there was an agreement. You've got sanctions against Venezuela. And Donald Trump lives in the world of sanctions. Now all of a sudden people are saying, well, let's see. If Russia does trade with China, that gets them around these sanctions. If China does deals with Venezuela, they'll get sanctions. What happened this week? China walked into Venezuela and said, hey, here is $5 billion to get your oil field started up as initial investment. We'll invest more. So what's happening is everyone is flipping Donald Trump the bird and saying, screw you, Mr. Bully. Screw you. Screw you. We're not putting up with your bullshit. Russia's saying to China, well, listen, we'd be glad to supply you all the oil you want and arms, and they had joint war exercises the first time in 50 years this past week, one of the biggest war games ever in Europe. And let me tell you, NATO got NATO's attention. Another thing you may not understand is China has now signed a deal to buy all the oil that Iran loses and takes off the market of the sanctions. They have the ships. The deal is done. They've been chartered. So what you don't understand is that the retaliation is in place. What are you doing? You're aligning Russia and China together, making a world superpower. Russia, any time it wants, can take over Europe. You've got trade deals like the Silk Road that is becoming the China trade deal and all their buddies. The Trans-Pacific Partnership, which was supposed to be competitive force to China, is now a China deal. You've got England, who's closely aligned with the United States, leaving the European Union. And all of a sudden we're seeing how the world is being divided up into places full of trade barriers. Now, if you understand this, then you understand that this is just a gambit by the President of the United States to try to save his administration, to try to save himself from impeachment. Now, let's look at the stock market. Stock market is trying for an S&P 500 for 3,000. And the reality is that the market should be plunging right now, not rallying, and it will. See, the stock market is not pricing in a Trump defeat at the elections. The stock market is not pricing in a trade war that becomes a serious one. The stock market is not pricing in the hostilities that are growing among the trade partners of China and the United States. Silk Road comes to mind, Venezuela, Iran. So now all of a sudden America's created a situation where we're driving our enemies into the welcoming arms of the Chinese. The Chinese are going, wait a minute. If we're really only losing 5% from America, we can make that up with Silk Road. If we're losing 5% with America and England is coming out of the European equation, we can move in. So now they're all of a sudden saying, wait a minute, we have a bigger advantage not making a deal with America. Now, even in the event we want a deal, well, guess what? Who would you rather deal with, Donald Trump or Pence? And all of a sudden they're saying, well, wait a minute. This president may not be able to put the sanctions in that he wants because he's about to lose his support. And all of a sudden China's saying, maybe we ought to wait for the elections to decide. Maybe it's a little premature. Maybe we ought to just see what happens here, because by the time November rolls around, Donald Trump may not have the power to even do these sanctions. He may not have the power to put the programs he wants. He may be fighting for his own survival. So the reality is that people all of a sudden are realizing that, hey, there is life after death. There is a scenario where we can survive this trade war and we can win it. We can make ourselves stronger. We can become a player on the world scene, and we'd like nothing better than to neutralize America. So now all of a sudden people are saying, wait a minute. Oh my God. We've got a situation where the president has given us an opening. He's allowed us to take our place as a superpower. Do you realize that in this trade war, American goods come out of the market globally, and you got a situation where China goods replace them? So we may be in a situation where America is absolutely eliminating itself, because Donald Trump said that America first, and people are going, well, okay, we can live with America first, and we can live with America last, and we can live with no America in the equation. So all of a sudden, what happens to America? Well, we lose the poultry business, we lose the pork business, we lose the agricultural product business. Now, years and years ago, there was a discussion about America's future. Do you realize that less than 10% of all manufacturing, there are only 10% of all jobs in America manufacturing, and they drop by 1 or 2% a year? Milton Friedman once said to me that if America's not careful, it's going to become that great soybean growing country and agriculture products. And in my lifetime from that meeting in New York City at the Rand Institute. I was amazed at how forward-looking it was, because America now is the soybean producer. America now is an agricultural product producer. And American exports of other things is minuscule and getting smaller by the day. Now, all of a sudden, America's position in world trade is very dicey, to say the least. Why? Well, you remember about no retaliation? I was listening to commentary saying, well, listen, America only exports $50 billion worth of goods into China. China exports to America $500 billion. There's not a lot of room for retaliation. Let's look at the retaliation that's taken place already. War games, the biggest the world's ever seen, with China and Russia. 1. 2. China signs a deal to put 2 million acres of Russian prime farmland into production to provide grain products to China. Oh, they didn't tell you about that. Yeah. 3. China signs a deal to take all the oil that Iran is going to have stuck because of U.S. sanctions, has arranged the ships to transport it, and arranged a very lucrative deal on their part with big discounts. 4. China goes into Venezuela, which is the country with the largest oil reserves known to man, and says, here's $5 billion today, let's do a JV, and there is more money coming. Has China retaliated? You bet your ass they have, in very intelligent and dramatic ways. Now, let me give you more predictions. As China comes, we're not the police of the world. I want to stick with New York City and Detroit and make coal mines great again. Don't you agree? Coal mines. So China goes, hey, no problem. Why don't we just take the high-tech business? So while American investments in next-generation products has dropped by 75%, China has tripled its investment. China is making the biggest investment by a factor of 5, for example, in 5G, the new mobile phone technology that will make vast amounts of data available to everyone and cheap. Revolution. So as America is stepping on its great big Trump foot, and I imagine it's a really big foot, China's going, well, you know, let's see how this works out, and we'll get back to you. So China all of a sudden is saying, I don't need this shit. We don't need America. We don't need America trade. There's a big pie out there of countries that want to buy our products. Remember, there's no trade war with China and Europe. There's no trade war with China and Japan. There's no trade war with China and Asia or India. There's no trade war with China and Mexico, and no trade war with China and Canada or Latin America. You know what it is? A trade war with a very stupid president, and that is something you're going to have to figure out for yourself. So, one day you're going to wake up and realize that under Donald Trump, and even his brief term of office, that there's no longer great America. He said he's going to make America great again. So his intention of doing that is taking America out of the world scene, creating a vacuum. And you know what's happening in that vacuum? The world's second biggest power is about to become the first, and China is going to surpass the United States in the next 5 years in every business category. And they are going to eat our lunch, and they're going to do it over and over again. And the guy who hastened the defeat of America as a great empire was Donald Trump, saying, make America great again. Make America great again in coal. Make America great again in steel. Make America great again in aluminum. And make America great in industrial factory jobs, which are less than 10% of all jobs in America. So what you got is an asshole who's got his head up his ass, who doesn't know what he's doing, who is absolutely devastating America as a world power player. So all that rhetoric sounds really good, and when you get those blue-collar guys jumping up and down, you know, at the factories of the Midwest where Donald Trump's going to appear, Remember that guy's working in the factory for a reason. And remember that Donald Trump doesn't know what the hell he's doing, and he's taking us down a road where he's destroying us as a nation, he's destroying us as traders, and he's bringing us to our knees. Are you getting this? Are you understanding what's happening? He's made the biggest mistake in the world, starting a trade war we will lose. He's making, and China's sitting, by the way, Donald Trump really likes to bully people. You remember when he was kind of pushing around poor Hillary on the stage in the debate? So Donald Trump's art of the deal, that's one of the tricks guys like him use. The problem is, you're not going to bully China. Got it? Donald Trump is not going to be able to bully China. It's a nice fantasy, but it's not going to happen. And China's not going to put up with Donald Trump's bullshit. And China is going to stand up to America. And it is a brilliant move. You want to know why? Because they become the world power. They become the world's greatest trading nation. Like America replaced England, well, China's going to replace America. Now you have been warned, you know what's going on. So I urge you to prepare yourself for the Trump depression, the stock market crash, America losing its role as a great trading nation, and we're going to become a shadow of our former selves. And that's all because we got a freaking idiot that started a stupid-ass trade war that there's nothing to win at the end of the day. There's no victory. What? China's not going to stop stealing intellectual property? No, it's not. It's going to step it up. China is going to welcome U.S. businesses into the market? Hell no, they're not. They're going to put so many impediments against American companies in China that you will hear them screaming like a raped ape from one end of the halls of Congress to another. Now America's lost the power to do anything about it. We've lost our leverage over China. Once you embargo the goods, once you put a duty on it, China goes, well, wait a minute. We got nothing to lose. You want a goddamn war? I'll give you a war. And that's exactly what China's doing. Do not underestimate China's ability to kick our ass in trade. Do not underestimate China's ability to out-engineer us, out-market us, out-develop us, and take on new technologies. Why? Well, Donald Trump just paid companies to take capitalization out of America. He paid them to buy back their stocks. He paid them to send their money home. So there's no incentive to make America great again. There's no incentive to do American manufacturing. There's no incentive for America to go open up new trade deals, right? China's going there, going, we're ready to trade. We're ready to invest. Our window's open. Donald Trump's going, well, no, we're turning within, and we're not going to do none of that goddamn foreign investment. But in foreign, no, sir. We're going to invest in good old America, in Michigan, and we're going to invest in coal mines, okay? So China's going, well, you know what? We're willing to invest in Venezuela. We're not going to put sanctions against them. And we're willing to invest in Africa. And we'll help you get those minerals to market. And China's moving in. And if America doesn't want Latin America, China's going, well, you know, we're perfectly willing to do business with Latin America and Brazil. And they're running around the world. Listen to me, hear me. As Donald Trump sticks his head further up his ass, gets closer to impeachment, okay, we know what the Chinese are doing in the vacuum of American businesses that don't know what to do. China is walking in and taking over market after market. They are moving America out of the equation. And I'm going to warn you again, America will be a shadow of its former self because Trump's going to convince you that trade is bad, balance of trade deficit is bad, and now I'm not going to have anyone take advantage of us no more, by God. What a freaking asshole idiot. God help you, God help me, God help everyone, because this guy, he's done destroyed America's edge as the business leader of the world, and he's allowed China to walk in the vacuum he created, and nothing good's going to come of that.